So let's start about me. I am a designer, but as you probably know, right now the role of design it's really hybrid. I start a little bit of years before as a communication designer and art director in agency, and I start also as a professor, working with students as a branding expert and art director. But what's happened in several research center where I conclude my doctoral studies is that I start to work a lot also with clients. And so I deep diving in service design, business innovation, and my main role also in with agency and research was the design strategist. But what means working in the field of design right now? Also because the role of design, it's a really we can say complex role. Sometimes people think that we are bridge. I choose this image of Saul Sternberg because really at the beginning of my career represent what I felt as a designer. Every time I try to connect people, I try as a project manager in agency, I try to connect designers. I try to connect also with the request of the clients. But I also work as a creative director and every day as a professor working with team of students. I try to create bridge between disciplines and between, of course, also project and design directions. But sometimes when we are doing project, we don't stay in our disciplines. We hybridate a lot our role. And so we are not only a bridge. And when I decide to think and to talk about the role of a designer, I'm talking most of the time, the designer has an hybrid figure. Most of my students, for example, in business design, they come from architecture, design, but also philosophy, sociology, business study, of course. And they have to transform themselves in another figure, in another professional figures. And so when they have to talk about themselves in terms of personal branding, most of the time they say we are an hybrid profile. We are really flexible. We can talk about numbers, but also about creativity. And we are trying to blend business discipline and strategy together with really creativity mindset. And so we can say that designers right now are connectors, are translators because they need to talk several languages. And of course, they have to break boundaries and they change themselves in relation sometimes of the context in which they work. So are a sort of karma chameleon, we can say, And so most of the time when I talk with my students, I say to them, you have to go out of the box of your comfort zone. Because maybe you start here in Domus Academy with graphic studies before. At the end, you have to become a strategy and you will see that you will change not only in terms of, we can say, craft and knowledge, but also in the way in which you will approach for real a project. And so I think that in order to create this kind of situation, the best thing is create a fruitful habitat. I think that fruitful habitat in work environment for sure, but also in schools, in academy, like in Domus, are places where people can discuss. Because most of the times ideas come when people discuss, they have lunch together, when they have to creating project, and most of the time they want to, crash their ideas. And that's what's happening. In maybe most of the time they have to envision in something. They have to solve problems, but also they have to set in problems. They have to envision in something that don't exist. And they come from all the parts of the world. They have different vision, culture, and mindset, but also in the way in which they are solving the problem. So we are talking about design methodology. They are really different. So the really great moment is when they start to create something together into the ideation session. So when we think about Domus Academy and we think about innovation, every time we say think further. Maybe I think you know, but the terms design, that in Latin is projectus, means look forward, so think further. So our role as a designer is not only doing something right now, but trying to design something for the futures. That's why envision and design new solution is really a responsibility for us and something that is innovative. But every time that we talk with people, people say, try to create something, try to design something that is truly innovative. But what is innovation right now? Is that having a good idea, but where the good ideas come from? This is the big question. A lot of journalists and designers ask themselves, what's happened? Probably you don't wake up in the morning having a eureka moment, but it's a combining activities and is led by a lot of experience and led by a lot of dialogue, talking with others that come from different disciplines, discuss with the others, try to find a way of creating together something probably most of the time out of the box, and trying also to combine your past with your present. Maybe you have studied philosophy and or sociology, and I think that everything that comes with you and your baggage is something that you can use and fill your project. And I will show you later with some example. So it's a carrying out of a new combination. It's try, to merge and to link to different points. And so, as Stephen Johnson says in his book, Where Good Ideas Come From, we can say that the good idea for real come from habitat and context that are really fruitful, as I told you before. Of course, is give as an example the Killing Island reef. You know probably that the reef is one of the most important ecosystem for biodiversity because coral, of course, give calcium, carbonates, create structure, give food and shelter for the fish. But most of the times, this kind of natural elements with waves, try to think about what we do every time as a designer. We have problem. We try to solve problems. We discuss together. And in a way, we can say that when we work together in a context, in a space that can lead to have a spillover of idea, is like exactly be there in a reef where there is this kind of environment where there is a big spillover of idea. These are two examples of our professor in a class together with our students. Here we have Giovanna Castiglioni, of course, of the family of Castiglioni designer, one of the Italian guru of design, working directly on the desk with our students. The good way of working together is that is a learning by design system. It's really useful to sharing idea in order to doing brainstorming, and this is something that is really part of Domus Academy DNA. Here you can see on the left in black and white a young Philip Stark that was doing a lecture together with our students. We have still this desk, this famous desk here in Domus Academy, and right now you can see on the right there is exactly the same situation. A professor that passed the time doing the revision with our students in a really, personal way, but giving, of course, their personal point of view as a professionist and as a designer. Most of our professors, they are for sure professor, but they work in real life environments. And we think that the real networking activity start directly into school. Start directly knowing our professor, start from the dialogue. And most of the time, our students, when they finish working here, they go and work in a studio together with them because they already know each other. They know the way in they're doing design. So for us, it's super important giving a place for envisioning and encouraging talents using creativity in order to create something that has an impact. So for us, it's fundamental talking with the student as game changers. So people that really can make the difference. There should be even a little break in the system, or they can break some rules, but at least that can give an idea with an impact. And so it's really important, give them guideline in order to learn code and decode and experiment. And I will show you how. This is an example of a group of students that really come from all the parts of the world, and they are deciding what to do during one of our workshop in business design. And I use this term, transdisciplinary, but what's really means? When we talk about multidisciplinary or transdisciplinarity, it's really important says that a transdisciplinary workshop is when you start in a way and you finish in a completely different way. That is transformative, not only in terms of project, but is transformative for you as a student, as a professionist. Because the final project, you can't even imagine how it is. Also because you have students and professionals that come from several disciplines, at the end, the outcome, it's a combination of the expertise of everybody. And this is something that's really, as an organism, is in continuous transformation. But it's different and how we can push innovation by design. As I told you, decoding and recombining in project-based activities. And how we can do that, how we can encouraging our students to learn, decode, and experiment. We talk a lot regarding design leadership, but be a design leader, it's a really important and difficult occupation because it means that you have a vision. You want to do something, you want to lead your project, you want to envisioning something, you have the craft and the competence and the quality to do that, and you have to maintain your design direction. Most of the time, the great design leaders can guide group of people in a really complex project that works even in the future. That is not day by day activity, but it's something that maybe you have to carry on for several years with your daily occupation, even inside a big and complex reality as a big agency or big product design firms, because most of the time you have requests that are really daily based. So what we teach to our students is try to carry on a vision, is try to find also an empathetic way of working with the other and explain to all the groups what means having a value, bring it forward, and also include the ideas of the others. So for us, it's super important working in the intersection between design, strategic leadership, and entrepreneurship. So push our students to scratch from zero their ideas and bring them to we can say an initial solution to an incubator that then should be even become part of a startup. Then we think that our approach is really a mix, as I told you before, between several methodologies and tools that come from various disciplines. And also we have a super design-driven mindset that want to combine strategy with creativity. How we do that? We do that through workshop. We work with, of course, companies, but also without. And in the moment in which we work without company, we work with jury. We ask experts to come and to check the startup of the project, the business idea of our students. And most of our experts, they come from important names, incubators, important agency in field of consultancy, and they help them really step by step in order to understand if they have a real, feedback from the market. Also, we invite business angel in order to have their, we can say, help in all the stage of the process. Here I want to present you some example that comes from our workshop in entrepreneurship through design. This is a project-based activity. This is a workshop. And in this workshop, students need to design strategy and to launch in the market a new business idea. So it's a mix of methodology, sensitivity, and we can say, of course, entrepreneurial culture. We work every time, as I told you, with a network of experts and professors. And this is an idea of what we do. Most of the time, our workshop, and we have 4 workshops during the years, during around 1 month, 1 month and a half. Are divided, we can say, as most of the time in 4 design phases. We have a launch, mid presentation in which the students are presenting their idea, business idea in progress, and a final presentation. Then we have expert that comes directly from agency and professors, and one project leader that carry on together with the students as a sort of mentor of all the workshop, of course, together with me. Another important thing is that all the teams are really multidisciplinary. It means that they really come from design, as I told you, architecture, and also students that are pursuing other master that can choose as an elective. And every time there are internal challenge. So every time we start with a problem and we arrive having a solution. And I want to quote, when we talk about the process, of course, one Italian guru that was Bruno Munari methodology. He say every time that when you know how to do that, then you can combine and deconstruct. This is the example of the famous green rice. Maybe I don't know if you know it, but says that doing design sometimes is like cooking. You know the ingredients, you know the several phases. At the end, you have to deliver something to the other. So every methodology is really important because it's a sort of guideline and have a sort of logic order. And experience, of course, is one of the most part and components. And so if we see the receipt of the green rice is really similar to the design methodology. So we start with the problems, we have a problem definition, we have the component of the problem, we start, to do market validation, we start to gathering data, we do an analysis of the data, and we start to having a sort of really ideation session and concept. Then we decide, since we are designer, which kind of design we want to create, which kind of business model. We verify it and we presenting a strong pitch. Okay. Most of the time when I have to present to my students, they say, a little bit. And say, how is similar? Is exactly similar. It's a matter of experience. So if I present you the super famous model, double diamond, of course, of the design council, you can see that every time we start with a problem, we have a solution. We have a phase of discovery, a phase of definition, the concepts itself, so the ideation with the design direction, the developing of the design of the project itself, and the delivery. That in the field of business, as you can imagine, since it's really related to a funnel pitch, it's really important. In this workshop of entrepreneurship in particular, every time we don't start with an analysis of a company. Most of the time we scratch our idea with the student from zero. So what we do is that doing a big and strong team building at the beginning, a group formation, and we start with the animation session. Most of the time, we push our students asking themselves really what they would like to do in the future. We are talking a lot, and we will see regarding responsibility in design, sustainability, ethical leadership, but what's really means for them. So they start to collect idea. They start to creating their group of that have a sort of combination between ideas and discipline, and they start really the work of discovery, in which they start doing the market validation, of course, that try to understand the competitors' arena, market trends, customer profile, and of course the critical success factors. When they arrive to have this insight, they are presenting during this mid-revision the concept to a jury, and then they go, if everything is okay, into the design phase and, of course, the final pitch. And to the final pitch, of course, they are presenting everything in relation also to the market feasibility, the business model, and so on, really more in details. And every time that we have to present to our student tools, because here we are talking about business tools, they're presenting them. So also since our students, they come really from different levels, we are talking about really, we can say experienced professionals with students that have just finished, for example, the bachelor's. We teach them business tools that are personas, business model canvas, customer journey, that are a sort of tools that are part of their personal baggage and they are using in order to analyzing the market, but also proposing their ideas. When we talk about sustainability is a big issue when we talk about responsibility and sustainability. And every day in class talking with my students, that most of them of course are millennial and Gen Z, is a real big issue. And I want to start the conversation with my students, not only talking about trends, but really talking about what they really want. And during the ideation session, as I told you before, there is this moment that we call doubt phase, and in which they have to think about themselves as a new entrepreneurs, but also as professionals that have to face for real some big issue and big problem. And so we start with this quote, "Know thyself," that is a Greek quote from Pythia, that say, "Knowing yourself is knowing you as a designer. It's an important starting point for all of us. You need time, you need to digest what you are learning every day in your class. And also, you really need to understand what means doing something with responsibility and sustainability in a long term. And also, what means also working with an ethical point of view, what means become an ethical leader." Here, I want to start presenting you also some student project examples. These are done in 1 month with a jury. The students they decide to work with together on some issue and big topics. This it's a project that came out from an entrepreneurship workshop, and the name is Kind Body. It's a femtech telemedicine platform that wants to create a safe space for women into the Asian market. They start working on the topic of inclusivity and stigma. And they start to understood with the research of the market that really a lot of women, they are facing stigma talking about fertility, contraceptive, hormonal cycle, and this is really important, even more in some country. The students they start working in general on in the Asian market, also because most of the students of this group, as you see, they come from India, Philippines, and Thailand. But then they want to concentrate some starting from the Philippine market. Why that? Because starting from the research that they have done, they see that this is the ready market in order to start the platform and then expand to different one. And they create really everything. I show you then a process book of one of my students that really well represent for real what they have done. Since from this slide you have seen that they are presented as a final pitch, they create a pretty strong communication. As you can see, they work with a business model B2C, B2B. And also they create a mock-up also because one of the students that have studies in interaction design and UX UI, and they also create a sort of mock-up of the platform. But what is really interesting is see the process book, so the methods and the design and the business tools that they start to use since from the first day. They start, as I told you, with an initiation session talking about stigma and inclusivity. They work a lot. They put, on the board a lot of elements, and they start to define some elements that they think really can make the difference. Then into the discovery phase, they have done a sort of market validation. They start to understand which are the health trends in 2023, because this was a project of 2023. They start to understand, of course, the competition arena, and they start to understand the key values and the key component, of course, of the canvas, the business model Canva. And so they try to extract the best practices from the market and which should be the most important features that will be part of their platform. They have presented in front of a jury during the mid-presentation, in which had them saying that they have to change slightly the business model in terms of actor, try to focus a little bit more on the local actors and local activities. So as you see, they went through the definition phase, understanding both the customer journey in terms of customers, but also when we are talking about B2B and the several professionals that will be part of the finals, we can say, ecosystem map. And here you can see also that during the design, they have done the go-to-market strategy, they have done social media campaign, video on YouTube. They try to represent it also with posters. They're also working with brand. One of the students have done study in branding and visual. And then they did a great presentation, and they start to also be really aware in terms of design process. As you see here, is a sort of triple diamond, because they start, of course, with a discovery, definition, developing. They have done the mid with the jury as a sort of check, and they come back in the definition phase, and then developing and designing and delivery. So as we know, our work as a designer is most of the time is coming back on our step and try to define better the strategy. And this is what happens every time in class, in which the students have to present something for real. So having a vision, another time, not to carry forward and try to find a real solution, a feasible solution in a long term. And also the nice part is that the group, it's fundamental every time in which the students, they have to create a new startup or new business idea. So the team itself. The team is really fundamental, but also most of the time they work for a platform or for a project for other people. So in a way, they are creating something for other communities. Here is another project, completely different. The students, they decided to launch it on a crowdfunding platform as a Kickstarter, and they want to create a sort of quick starter. So a super easy project with more or less zero technology inside. And they want to start with a big, we can say, topic that is kids and parents. They want to make an ethical and sustainable choices. They want to help parents to teach, to their kids, their child, sustainability, but also play and talking about money in a completely different way. Of course, I will show you with a video the project inside, but the nice part is that the students, one come from Italy, and another one come from India, and they really mix also in the way that they decide to craft the final project itself, because they start with a typical Indian tradition using a typical Italian terra rossa. That is a sort of ceramic that is really related to Italian artisan. Here you can see also a beginning of the business model with the Kickstarter, of course the bakers, and of course also the final customers. Here the video. as you can see directly from the video, they have tried to work together on big topic as, of course, education, um, in terms of talking about money with kids, but also sustainability, also to teach them the importance of course, materials and sustainability, as you can see here, but also talking about big topic, of course, talking about animals, and everything is connected in a really smart business model that want to link together the customers together with the startup itself, but also with artisans that in Italy probably is one of the most important community, and there are different funding in order to help them to enrich their network. And also here, another time, you can see from the process book of one of my students how they try to discover, define, design, and delivery. They start with a big research and investigation. They have tried to understand also which should be other project to be launched on Kickstarter, starting from also understanding the community of this crowdfunding platform. They've done a lot of brainstorming in class. The ideation start at the beginning, try to understand different product already be part of the market, and then they start with the idea, of course, of the piggy bank. And they try to solve it, also mixing the Indian culture and also finding you can see here some relation, of course, with Enzo Mari design, so an Italian craft. And also here you can see that they have tested the prototypes with kids. They have worked in terms of cost and revenue. They really went into the depth, understanding all the actors of the business models. And the real for this kind of platform is really important to understand how to build the right campaign. And here you can see the final pitch presentation and a representation, of course, of the design process. This is the last project that I want to present you that is done also from my students of the Master in Business Design. And they start since they are digital nomads, that's most of my students, and they really love plants. They really start to asking themselves when they have to change country and they need to recreate their personal garden, how they can do that. But of course, using, we can see kilometer zero and working with local actors. This is a presentation of my students, all the city in which they've lived and worked in the last years. And this is a presentation of what they really want to do. So it's a regenerative initiative that want to work, of course, on environment and social impact. They want to create a physical ecosystem connecting facilities that are in the city of Milan in order to help people creating a vertical garden, a customized garden, really in their office or their house. But how they can do that? Since most of the time people, they really don't know how to do that, they start, of course, from a really important social concern that are related to climate anxiety and city as also in part of Milano, we are facing pollution, but also starting from a real research. So they have done a qualitative research, they have done interviews, and they have understood that this should be the right city in order to launch a project like this. Because people love plants, but they don't know how to treat them. And but it's a city in which we are talking a lot in terms of municipality and government, but also in terms of design and architecture. This is the city of Bosco Verticale for sure, that we are talking about climate change. And so they start talking with a lot of actors that are here in Milano and they work on the territory and try to creating a network with local organization. They want to instill a strong sense of responsibility and directly in an intimate space, for example, as your home, or in part, of course, your office, where you spend a lot of hours. And they create this platform. that want to give, of course, educational awareness. So the platform help you every day and help you in understanding how you can help your plants at home. Is customized and brings you in contact, so create link with a really active community. As a shop, help you with your personal garden. You can see here the main features. You have a virtual assistant, and you will become part of the Green Collective, also sharing, of course, your experience with the other, and you have also a monthly delivery subscription, since we are talking about, of course, also in terms of feasibilities. Here are some slides of the mockup that they have created in terms of website and application. You can see here that also they use a tone of voice and we say in terms of branding, really that want to break barrier. Also when we are talking about education and gardening. And also here you can see Bella, your personal assistant, that every day tells you in relation to the plants that you have exactly what you have to do. Also, of course, using interface design, a little bit of artificial intelligence. Here you can see the business models. So of course, the clients, because it starts being a B2C, the platform, you can see simply roots, but also you can see all the element of of the product itself. So exactly the component, the suppliers that they have identified in the territory, in the city of Milano, the service, because they brings you is an home delivery, they brings you directly at home the plants that you have selected, and of course some collaborators that should be part, of course, of the network that already exists in Milano. Will be super important because this idea was part, of course, of an incubator, but when you have to make it for reals, there are metrics and measurements of the traction. So it's really important understanding not only the social impact, of course, but also having a number of local organizations, schools, that should be the next step, of course, try to find also a B2B models also with organization, foundation, and other companies. And in terms of platform, understanding, for example, the minute spent on the app per day, the subscriptions, and the sign up for community events. So this is another project like the one that I presented you before that really has an impact. That talk about, of course, lifestyles, gardening, but also want to connect with something that already exists, both in terms of community, but also in terms of suppliers and organization, in order to create a sort of a bigger point of view. You know, we are talking about a system, a sort of huge ecosystem in which several actors are really fundamentals. And so the next step, they say, of course, we can work with nurturing homes of schools and try to educating kids since from the beginning. So coming, back to the initial slide, how we can push innovation by design. For sure, envisioning, say to our students, you need to find your design direction. You need to find your vision, and we will help you giving, the tools in order to doing that. Then become a leader, it means working and speaking different language. So change also yourself in multidisciplinary teams. Providing them a format as a workshop with custom tools, it's really necessary in terms of giving them the time, line in which they have really to structure something and trying to understanding which are the main building blocks that the students can arrange and reinterpret, of course, in order to achieve their goals. Our mindset, of course, is not ego related, but it's eco related. So, talking in terms of system when we talk about responsibility and design. And for us as a professor, our responsibility as educators, as a designer, of course, is inspiring good behaviors and pushing an environmental, social, economic revolution. Try to teach them what means an ethical point of view and what means working with a collective responsibility. So critical thinking in terms of approach, it's fundamental. It's start to asking yourself what you really want to do and what you can do for the other, because you have to create project for the others and for also the environment and for the planet. And even if you can add a little brick in the system and you can change the system, you can do really something. So the most important thing is which kind of design of the future you would like to be. So that's the initial questions that we say every time to our students, and we try to work with them and we try to inspire them. So thank you very much.